Andrew Wilson loved the quiet life his farm afforded him. For over 15 years, his 5-acre property had been his haven, a place where he could escape the chaos of the outside world and indulge in his passion for farming. Nestled on the outskirts of a growing suburban neighborhood, Andrew's land remained untouched by the rapid development around him. It was a slice of peace that he had worked tirelessly to maintain after retiring from his career as a schoolteacher. The farm was more than just land to Andrew, it was a legacy. The barn, a sturdy wooden structure painted a deep red, had been built with his own hands. Rows of crops lined the fields, planted meticulously to ensure a steady harvest. Every blade of grass, every tree, every corner of the property bore his personal touch. To him, it was more than just property, it was his life's work. That morning began like any other. The sun rose lazily over the horizon, casting a warm orange glow over the fields. Andrew sipped his coffee on the porch, savoring the tranquility of the early hours. The occasional hum of cars from the distant highway barely broke the silence, blending instead into the symphony of chirping birds and rustling leaves. He had no reason to believe anything was amiss. It wasn't until mid-morning that the quiet was shattered. The low rumble of heavy machinery grew louder, pulling Andrew's attention toward the edge of his property. At first, he thought it might be construction work in the nearby subdivision, where new homes seemed to sprout like weeds. But the sound grew closer, more intrusive, and then unmistakable. It was on his land. Alarmed, Andrew set his coffee mug down and hurried toward the noise. As he rounded the corner of his house, the sight that met him was nothing short of horrifying. A large bulldozer was plowing through his field, flattening rows of carefully planted crops as if they were nothing but weeds. Behind it, a crew of workers stood idly, directing the chaos with shouts and hand signals. Andrew's barn was next in line. The driver of the bulldozer didn't hesitate as the massive machine roared forward, its metal blade tearing into the structure. Wood splintered and cracked with a sickening sound, the barn collapsing in on itself in a cloud of dust and debris. Andrew felt his heart drop into his stomach. "Hey, stop," Andrew shouted, his voice hoarse with panic as he sprinted toward the scene. "What the hell are you doing?" The workers turned to look at him, their expressions a mix of surprise and indifference. One of them, a middle-aged man in a reflective vest and hard hat, stepped forward with a clipboard in hand. He waved at the bulldozer driver, who finally brought the monstrous machine to a halt. "Can I help you?" the man asked, his tone devoid of any real concern. Andrew could barely contain his anger. "What do you think you're doing? This is my property. You can't just destroy my land like this." The man glanced at his clipboard and then back at Andrew, his expression unreadable. "We're following orders. The Homeowner Association Board approved the removal of this structure and the clearing of the lot. It's in violation of Homeowner Association bylaws." Andrew stared at him in disbelief. "Homeowner Association bylaws? I'm not even part of the Homeowner Association. My property has nothing to do with your neighborhood." The man shrugged, his indifference stoking Andrew's fury. "According to the paperwork, this property now falls within Homeowner Association jurisdiction. The annexation was approved last year. Didn't you get the notice?" Andrew's blood ran cold. Annexation? Notice? None of this made sense. He hadn't received any letters, emails, or phone calls. As far as he knew, his farm was private property, entirely separate from the nearby suburban development. There had never been any indication that this would change. Yet here he was, watching helplessly as his land was torn apart, based on some vague claim of Homeowner Association authority. "This is a mistake," Andrew said, his voice trembling with anger and desperation. "You have no right to do this. You need to stop immediately." The man sighed, clearly impatient. "Look, I'm just the contractor. If you've got an issue, take it up with the Homeowner Association Board. My team's got a job to do, and we're not stopping until it's done." Andrew clenched his fists, the urge to scream barely restrained. He needed to do something, anything, to stop the destruction. "If you don't leave right now, I'm calling the sheriff," he warned, his voice rising. The contractor hesitated, glancing back at the workers, then at Andrew. "Suit yourself," he said with a smirk, "but it won't change anything. We've got the board's approval." Andrew wasted no time. He pulled his phone from his pocket and dialed the local sheriff's office. His hands shook as he explained the situation, his voice filled with urgency. The dispatcher assured him that a deputy would be sent out immediately, but it would take time. Meanwhile, the destruction continued. The workers resumed their tasks, oblivious to Andrew's protests. The bulldozer roared back to life, moving toward the remaining pieces of the barn. Andrew stood in its path, shouting for them to stop, but the machine didn't slow. It wasn't until the contractor barked an order that the driver reluctantly hit the brakes, glaring at Andrew through the windshield. "Sir, you're obstructing our work," the contractor said, his tone sharp. "If you don't move, I'll have to report you." "Report me?" Andrew shot back, his voice shaking with rage. "You're trespassing on my property and destroying everything I've worked for. I should be the one reporting you." The standoff was interrupted by the arrival of the sheriff's deputy, his patrol car kicking up dust as it pulled onto the property. Andrew felt a surge of relief as the deputy stepped out, adjusting his hat as he surveyed the scene. "What's going on here?" the deputy asked, his voice calm but authoritative. Andrew wasted no time explaining, detailing how the workers had trespassed onto his land and destroyed his property under the pretense of homeowner association bylaws. The contractor, unbothered, presented the deputy with his clipboard, pointing out the supposed approval from the homeowner association board. The deputy frowned as he reviewed the paperwork. "This doesn't look right," he said finally. "Annexation requires formal notification to the property owner, and I'm not seeing any evidence that happened here." Andrew felt a flicker of hope. "Because it didn't," he said firmly. "This is my land, and I never agreed to be part of the homeowner association." The deputy nodded, turning to the contractor. "I'm going to need you and your crew to stop work immediately until we can sort this out. You're on thin ice here." The contractor grumbled but eventually relented, ordering his team to stand down. Andrew watched as the machines fell silent, the workers retreating to their trucks. The damage was already done. His barn lay in ruins and his fields were a mess, but at least for now the destruction had stopped. As the deputy promised to investigate further, Andrew felt a simmering mix of anger and determination. This wasn't over. He wouldn't let the homeowner association get away with this, not without a fight. The next morning, Andrew Wilson sat at his kitchen table, staring at the remnants of his barn visible through the window. The sight of the collapsed structure sent a fresh wave of anger and despair coursing through him. He couldn't let the homeowner association get away with what they had done. He needed answers and fast. Andrew spent the first few hours of the day calling various offices, starting with the county clerk's office. If this so-called annexation had been legally executed, there should be a record of it. After navigating through the labyrinth of automated systems and bureaucratic jargon, he finally managed to speak with a clerk. "I need information about an annexation," Andrew explained, trying to keep his voice steady. "The homeowner association from the neighborhood near my property is claiming they've annexed my land. Can you check if anything like that has been filed?" The clerk asked for the address and other details, then put him on hold. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. Finally, the clerk returned with an answer that confirmed Andrew's suspicions. "There's no record of any annexation involving your property," the clerk said. "If it had been filed, it would be in our system, and we'd have sent you an official notification." Andrew thanked the clerk, his frustration boiling over. The homeowner association had acted without proper legal authority, but why? And how had they managed to carry out the annexation without involving the county? Andrew suspected the answer lay with the homeowner association board, particularly its president, Karen Wilkes. He spent the afternoon gathering all the documents he could find related to his property. The deed, property tax records, and even the original purchase agreement, all of it confirmed what he already knew: his farm was private property, completely separate from the neighborhood and its homeowner association. Armed with this evidence, Andrew decided it was time to confront the homeowner association directly. The homeowner association office was housed in a nondescript brick building at the edge of the neighborhood. Andrew parked his truck and approached the front door, feeling a mix of anger and apprehension. Inside, the office was as bland and sterile as he'd expected, with beige walls and a single desk manned by a bored-looking receptionist. "Can I help you?" the receptionist asked without looking up from her computer. "I need to speak with Karen Wilkes," Andrew said firmly. "It's about my property." The receptionist gave him a cursory glance, then picked up the phone. After a brief exchange, she motioned for Andrew to wait. Moments later, Karen Wilkes appeared, her expression a mask of polite indifference. "Mr. Wilson," she said, her tone clipped. "What can I do for you?" Andrew struggled to keep his temper in check. "You can explain why your homeowner association sent bulldozers onto my land and destroyed my barn without any legal authority." Karen raised an eyebrow. "As I'm sure you're aware, your property was annexed into our homeowner association jurisdiction last year. The board approved it unanimously. There was a public meeting, and notices were sent to all affected property owners." "That's a lie," Andrew snapped. "I never received any notice, and the county has no record of your so-called annexation. You had no right to touch my property." Karen's expression hardened. "Mr. Wilson, the annexation was perfectly legal. If you failed to keep up with your obligations as a property owner, that's not the homeowner association's fault. Your barn violated our bylaws, and the board took the necessary steps to resolve the issue." Andrew couldn't believe her audacity. "Necessary steps? You destroyed my property. That barn wasn't just a building, it was my livelihood." Karen's eyes narrowed. "If you have concerns, I suggest you take it up with our legal team. But as far as the homeowner association is concerned, the matter is settled." Andrew stared at her, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. He wanted to yell to demand justice, but he knew it would get him nowhere. Karen Wilkes wasn't going to admit fault, not without being forced to. "I will take it up with your legal team," Andrew said finally, his voice low and steady. "And with the sheriff, the county, and anyone else who will listen. This isn't over." Karen didn't respond, merely giving him a tight-lipped smile before turning on her heel and walking back to her office. As Andrew left the building, his mind raced. The homeowner association's arrogance only strengthened his resolve. He needed to dig deeper, to find the cracks in their story and expose the truth. But first, he needed help. That evening, Andrew called his attorney, Lisa Grant. Lisa had a reputation for being tenacious, and Andrew trusted her judgment. After listening to his account of the events, she agreed to take the case. "This sounds like a classic case of homeowner association overreach," Lisa said. "We'll start by filing an injunction to stop them from doing any further damage. In the meantime, I'll request all their records on the annexation and any related decisions. If they're operating without proper authority, we'll make sure they're held accountable." Over the next few days, Andrew and Lisa worked tirelessly to build their case. Lisa sent formal requests to the homeowner association for copies of their meeting minutes, annexation documents, and any notices they claimed to have sent to Andrew. She also subpoenaed the contractor who had carried out the demolition, seeking to uncover whether they had been aware of the legal gray area surrounding the project. Andrew, meanwhile, took his fight to the public. He contacted local news outlets, sharing photos and videos of the destruction. His story quickly gained traction, sparking outrage among community members and beyond. Calls flooded the homeowner association office, demanding an explanation for their actions. One evening, while scrolling through comments on a news article about his case, Andrew stumbled upon a post from another local landowner. The man claimed he had also been targeted by the homeowner association, receiving threatening letters about supposed violations despite not being part of the association. Intrigued, Andrew reached out to him. The man, a retiree named Bill Harrison, shared a story that mirrored Andrew's own. The homeowner association had sent him notices about unauthorized structures on his property, threatening fines and legal action if he didn't comply. Bill had ignored the letters, assuming they were a mistake. But now he realized the homeowner association's aggression wasn't accidental, it was part of a pattern. Together, Andrew and Bill began reaching out to other landowners in the area, looking for similar stories. What they uncovered was alarming. The homeowner association had been systematically targeting properties near the neighborhood, claiming annexation rights and enforcing bylaws without proper authorization. Many victims had been too intimidated or overwhelmed to fight back. Armed with this new information, Andrew felt a renewed sense of purpose. The homeowner association wasn't just overstepping their boundaries, they were exploiting their power to bully and manipulate property owners. It was a pattern of abuse that couldn't go unchallenged. As the pieces of the puzzle came together, Andrew realized the scope of what he was up against. This wasn't just about his farm, it was about standing up to a system that thrived on greed and intimidation. And he wasn't going to back down. The public outrage over Andrew Wilson's story was growing rapidly. Local news stations had picked up the story, and it was being shared widely on social media. Neighbors, strangers, and even activists were rallying behind Andrew, expressing their disgust at the homeowner association's actions. Despite this groundswell of support, Andrew knew that public opinion alone wouldn't win his battle. He needed concrete evidence and allies who were willing to stand beside him. Andrew's attorney, Lisa Grant, worked tirelessly to gather the necessary documents. Over the next few days, the homeowner association begrudgingly complied with her legal requests, handing over meeting minutes, correspondence, and annexation paperwork. Lisa combed through the records meticulously, searching for inconsistencies. It didn't take long to uncover some alarming irregularities. First, the so-called annexation that Karen Wilkes had claimed gave the homeowner association authority over Andrew's property was riddled with procedural errors. The documents were incomplete, lacking signatures from key county officials. Worse still, there was no proof that the homeowner association had ever notified Andrew of their intentions. Notices that were supposedly mailed to him didn't include tracking numbers or other verifiable details, making it impossible to prove they had ever been sent. Second, Lisa discovered that the homeowner association board had explicitly discussed Andrew's property in a closed-door meeting months before the annexation attempt. Meeting minutes revealed that Karen Wilkes and other board members saw Andrew's farm as a prime opportunity to create a community park that would increase neighborhood property values. This revelation infuriated Andrew. It was clear that the homeowner association had targeted his land not out of necessity but out of greed. Andrew decided to take his fight to the next level. He reached out to Bill Harrison, the retiree who had shared his own story of homeowner association harassment, and together they began contacting other victims in the area. It turned out there were many. Farmers, homeowners, and even small business owners had faced similar tactics from the homeowner association. The stories varied. Some were pressured to sell their properties at below market rates, while others were slapped with bogus fines or threatened with legal action. But the common thread was the homeowner association's pattern of intimidation and overreach. With Lisa's guidance, Andrew and Bill organized a community meeting at a local recreation center. Over 50 people showed up, many of them eager to share their experiences. Andrew stood at the front of the room, his voice steady but impassioned as he recounted what had happened to his farm. The crowd listened intently, nodding in agreement and murmuring in outrage. "This isn't just about my property," Andrew said, his voice firm. "This is about all of us. The homeowner association thinks they can do whatever they want, and they've been getting away with it for far too long. It's time we stand up and show them that we won't be bullied." Applause erupted, and Andrew felt a surge of determination. The meeting ended with a plan. The group would form a coalition to hold the homeowner association accountable. Lisa helped them draft a petition demanding a full investigation into the homeowner association's practices. They also agreed to pool resources to cover legal expenses and media outreach. In the days that followed, the coalition gained momentum. The petition quickly gathered hundreds of signatures, not just from victims but also from concerned residents and supporters from neighboring towns. Local activists offered their help, organizing protests and writing letters to county officials. The media continued to cover the story, keeping public attention on the issue. Karen Wilkes, meanwhile, was beginning to feel the pressure. The once confident homeowner association president was now dodging reporters and refusing to answer questions. The homeowner association board attempted damage control, releasing a statement claiming they had acted in good faith and that any mistakes were administrative oversights. But the public wasn't buying it. Lisa, ever methodical, used the growing public scrutiny to her advantage. She filed a formal complaint with the county, requesting an official audit of the homeowner association's finances and practices. Her suspicions were soon confirmed. The homeowner association's financial records showed questionable expenditures, including payments to contractors with ties to Karen Wilkes and other board members. It appeared that the board had been profiting from its aggressive annexation and development tactics. Andrew's coalition continued to dig deeper, uncovering even more damning evidence. One former homeowner association board member, who had resigned months earlier, came forward with a shocking revelation: the annexation of Andrew's property had never been intended to follow legal procedures. According to this whistleblower, Karen had explicitly instructed the board to fast-track the process, knowing it would likely face legal challenges. Andrew felt a mix of vindication and anger as the truth came to light. The evidence was overwhelming. The homeowner association had acted illegally, driven by greed and a blatant disregard for property rights. But despite the progress they had made, Andrew knew the fight wasn't over. The board would do everything in its power to protect itself. One evening, as Andrew reviewed the latest developments with Lisa, he received a call from a local reporter. The journalist, who had been covering the story since the beginning, had uncovered another bombshell. Karen Wilkes had been lobbying county officials behind the scenes, trying to secure retroactive approval for the annexation. If successful, this move could undermine much of Andrew's case. Lisa acted quickly, filing an emergency injunction to block any further attempts to legitimize the annexation. The coalition rallied their supporters, flooding the county offices with phone calls and emails demanding transparency and accountability. And public protests outside the homeowner association office grew larger, drawing the attention of state-level officials. As the weeks passed, the pressure on the homeowner association became unbearable. Karen Wilkes resigned, citing personal reasons, and several other board members followed suit. The county launched a formal investigation, and the coalition's efforts were recognized as a major turning point in the fight against homeowner association abuse. Andrew, though exhausted, felt a renewed sense of hope. He had started this battle alone, but now he had an entire community behind him. The destruction of his farm had been a devastating blow, but it had also sparked a movement. Andrew was determined to see it through, no matter how long it took. The homeowner association's reign of unchecked power was coming to an end, and Andrew would make sure justice was served. The morning of the court hearing arrived, casting a mix of tension and determination over Andrew Wilson's household. This was the day he had been fighting for, the moment when the truth about the homeowner association's unlawful actions would finally come to light. With his attorney Lisa Grant by his side and the support of the community behind him, Andrew stepped into the courthouse ready to face the homeowner association's legal team. Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere was electric. Journalists filled the back rows, while dozens of supporters from Andrew's coalition packed the benches. At the front sat the remaining homeowner association board members, including Karen Wilkes, who had been subpoenaed despite her recent resignation. Her confident demeanor from weeks prior had vanished, replaced by an air of nervous defiance. The weight of public outrage and mounting evidence had clearly taken its toll. The judge, a no-nonsense woman with a reputation for fairness, called the proceedings to order. Lisa began by presenting a meticulously crafted argument, starting with the procedural failures of the so-called annexation. She highlighted how the homeowner association had bypassed the required county approvals, failed to notify Andrew, and acted with blatant disregard for due process. Copies of the incomplete annexation documents were displayed, their missing signatures and dates speaking volumes. "Your Honor," Lisa said, her voice steady, "this case isn't just about one man's property. It's about an organization that has consistently overstepped its authority, using intimidation and deceit to further its own interests." The homeowner association board knew they lacked the legal authority to annex Mr. Wilson's land, yet they proceeded to destroy his property without hesitation. The homeowner association's lawyer attempted to argue that the board had acted in good faith, claiming they believed the annexation was legitimate. But Lisa was prepared. She presented emails and meeting minutes from the homeowner association's own records, which showed that Karen Wilkes and other board members had knowingly bypassed legal requirements. One particularly damning email revealed Karen's strategy to avoid notifying Andrew, stating that it's easier to ask for forgiveness than permission. When it was time for Andrew to take the stand, he spoke with raw emotion. He described the devastation of watching his barn collapse, the crops he had nurtured for years reduced to rubble, and the deep sense of betrayal he felt knowing it had all been done under false pretenses. His words resonated with everyone in the room, painting a vivid picture of the personal toll the homeowner association's actions had taken. "I've spent my life building that farm," Andrew said, his voice firm but tinged with sadness. "It wasn't just a piece of land to me, it was my home, my livelihood, and my sanctuary. The homeowner association didn't just destroy property. They destroyed a part of my life." The turning point came when Lisa called a former homeowner association board member to testify. This whistleblower, who had resigned in protest months earlier, confirmed that the annexation had been a deliberate scheme to seize Andrew's land. She revealed that the board had planned to develop a community park on the property, believing it would increase property values and secure their re-election. Her testimony left no doubt that the homeowner association's actions were motivated by greed. After hours of arguments, evidence, and testimonies, the judge finally delivered her verdict. She ruled unequivocally in Andrew's favor, declaring the annexation null and void. The homeowner association was ordered to pay full restitution for the damages to Andrew's property, including the cost of rebuilding his barn, replanting his fields, and covering his legal fees. The total amount exceeded $1 million, a sum that sent shockwaves through the homeowner association and its supporters. But the consequences didn't end there. The judge also referred the case to the state attorney general's office, citing potential criminal misconduct by Karen Wilkes and other board members. The crowd outside the courthouse erupted in cheers as news of the verdict spread. Andrew, who had fought so hard for this moment, felt a wave of relief and vindication wash over him. In the weeks that followed, the fallout from the case continued to unfold. The county launched its own investigation into the homeowner association, uncovering years of financial mismanagement and shady dealings. Several board members, including Karen, faced charges of fraud and abuse of power. The homeowner association was forced to restructure, with new leadership pledging to operate transparently and ethically moving forward. For Andrew, the victory was bittersweet. While the settlement money allowed him to rebuild, it couldn't erase the emotional scars left by the ordeal. His barn was reconstructed, his fields replanted, but the memory of the destruction lingered. Still, he took solace in knowing that his fight had made a difference not just for himself, but for the entire community. The coalition that had formed during the battle against the homeowner association became a lasting force for good. Members worked together to advocate for property owners' rights, ensuring that no one else would face the kind of injustice Andrew had endured. The group's efforts inspired similar movements in neighboring towns, sparking a broader conversation about the limits of homeowner association authority. Andrew's farm, once a symbol of devastation, became a beacon of resilience. He opened his land to the community, hosting events, workshops, and educational programs that brought people together. Children laughed as they learned about farming, families gathered for picnics, and neighbors forged bonds that transcended the divisions of the past. Reflecting on the journey, Andrew realized that his fight had been about more than just his farm. It was about standing up to those who abused their power, about holding wrongdoers accountable, and about protecting the values of fairness and justice. Though the road had been long and arduous, he knew it had been worth every step. As the sun set over his rebuilt barn and the fields swayed gently in the breeze, Andrew felt a sense of peace he hadn't known in months. His farm was his again, and his community was stronger than ever. And as he stood there, watching the light fade into the horizon, he knew that no homeowner association or anyone else would ever take that away from him again.